December 1872. I want you to put yourself right there, right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The water is this rough slate gray. The sky is just completely overcast.
Oh, setting the scene right away. I like it. The North Atlantic in winter is definitely not a welcoming place.
No, it really isn't. So you're standing on the deck of a merchant ship called the Dei Gratia, and you're making your way between Portugal and the Azores. And out there, rolling in the distance, you spot something. Another ship.
Right, which, encountering another vessel wasn't inherently strange on its own. Ships crossed paths in those Atlantic trade routes constantly back then.
Sure, but as you drift closer, the details start to feel really unsettling.
Right.
The ship is moving completely aimlessly, like it's yawing back and forth, not holding a clear course at all.
Yeah, the sails are just catching the wind haphazardly.
Exactly. And there are no distress signals flying from the masts. But most unnerving of all, you're squinting through the spyglass, and there's absolutely no one visible on deck.
And that right there is a massive red flag for any 19th century sailor. I mean, a merchant ship of that size, traveling under sail, it requires constant physical human intervention.
Right, someone has to be steering.
Exactly. The sails need trimming, the wheel needs manning, so a silent deck means something has gone terribly, terribly wrong.
So Captain David Morehouse of the Dei Gratia, he orders his men to move in closer. And as they pull up alongside, they see the name painted across the stern, Mary Celeste. Ah, yes, the ultimate ghost ship.
Right. What Captain Morehouse's boarding party discovers when they step over the rail of that ship, it basically became arguably the greatest maritime mystery in human history.
It really is the definitive ghost ship story. And, the allure of this case isn't just the disappearance itself. It's the psychological vacuum that the disappearance left behind.
A total vacuum, which is why our mission today for this deep dive is to dig into a massive stack of historical sources to figure out what actually happened out there.
We have some incredible original sources for this, too.
We really do. We are stripping away the mythology by looking at the original court transcripts from the 1872 Gibraltar salvage inquiry. We're examining original cargo manifests, structural blueprints of merchant ships, and, sorting through 150 years of increasingly wild newspaper clippings.
It's quite a paper trail.
Yeah.
And the goal is to separate those factual nuggets from the fiction.
Exactly. But to understand any of the theories, we first have to step aboard that deck exactly as Chief Mate Oliver DeVoe and his boarding party did on December 5th.
Yeah, we really have to consider their mindset as they crossed over that rail. I mean, when you find a drifting, silent vessel in 1872, your mind immediately goes to the usual terrifying suspects.
Like a storm or something.
Right. You expect to find catastrophic structural failure, like masts snapped by a gale, or the hull breached by a reef, or perhaps even more chillingly, you expect to find disease.
Oh, like a plague ship.
Yes, exactly. A ship where cholera or yellow fever just swept through the crew and wiped everyone out. Basically, you expect bodies. You expect a tragedy that makes logical, visual sense to you.
But the reality they found was infinitely more unsettling because it defied all of those expectations. The Mary Celeste was, fundamentally intact. She was completely seaworthy.
Wait, really? Floating there in perfect condition.
Pretty much. I mean, the sails were in decent condition, though some were blown out from the wind. And the food and fresh water supplies were abundantly available on board, like enough to last them for months.
Okay, let's unpack the nuance of the sources here, because the ship wasn't perfectly pristine, right? But the damage definitely didn't explain an evacuation.
Right, it wasn't spotless.
The boarding party found, I think, about 3.5 feet of water sloshing around in the hold. And they also found that one of the ship's massive manual water pumps had been completely dismantled, just lying there on the deck.
Yeah, and 3.5 feet of water, that sounds alarming to a layperson today. But for a 100-foot merchant vessel of that era, it was entirely manageable. It certainly wasn't enough to sink her.
But the pump is weird, right?
The dismantled pump is a critical piece of the puzzle. You have to remember, a ship's pump in 1872 wasn't a push-button electrical system. It was a heavy, manual wooden and iron contraption that drew water up from the lowest part of the hull.
So taking it apart meant someone was actively working on it.
Exactly. Someone was trying to fix it or perhaps clear a clog right before they vanished.
And alongside that dismantled pump, life below deck looked like it had simply paused. And this is that frozen in time element that really captured the public's imagination, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's the eerie, everyday details.
Like the crew's personal belongings were sitting totally undisturbed inside their sea chests. The sources note that a sewing machine was sitting right beside a piece of clothing, as if the person operating it had just stood up.
Yeah, there were pipes sitting on shelves, and valuables were just left untouched.
I mean, imagine walking into a friend's house, right? The front door is wide open, a hot cup of coffee is sitting on the kitchen counter, the television is still playing, and your friend has just stepped out mid-sentence.
It's incredibly unnerving.
But in this case, the house is drifting hundreds of miles from the nearest land.
It completely defies every basic human instinct of self-preservation. But amid all that eerie normalcy, the undisturbed cabins, the secured cargo, there was one singular, glaring physical absence.
Right.
A detail that instantly changes the nature of the entire investigation. The ship's yawl, which is a small lifeboat normally secured across the main hatch, was missing.
So that completely rules out the idea that a massive rogue wave just swept across the deck and washed everyone into the sea simultaneously, right? Which, I mean, is a tragic reality of deep-sea sailing, but if that happened, the lifeboat would still be lashed securely to the deck.
Exactly. The missing lifeboat implies a specific action. The wooden davits, those are the cranes used to lower the small boat into the water. They showed signs that the yawl had been deliberately deployed.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a coordinated choice to leave the Mary Celeste. They chose to go over the side into the open ocean.
Okay, so we have to ask who these people were and why on earth they would make a choice that seems so profoundly irrational. The manifest lists 10 souls on board. The ship had left New York the previous month, in November 1872, bound for Genoa, Italy.
Right, and the leader of this expedition was Captain Benjamin Briggs. And by all accounts, he was highly experienced, widely respected in maritime circles, and he was actually a part owner of the Mary Celeste.
So he had a financial stake in keeping the ship safe.
A huge one. And he was traveling with his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. They were also accompanied by a first mate and 6 crew members, all of whom carried excellent reputations as capable veteran sailors.
Okay, so we are not talking about a ragtag crew of inexperienced amateurs who might just, panic at the first sign of a storm.
Not at all.
These are seasoned professionals led by a captain who literally has his own toddler and wife on board. Nothing about that demographic suggests a group prone to taking reckless, uncalculated risks.
Which brings us to the Gibraltar salvage inquiry, spearheaded by the Attorney General of Gibraltar, Frederick Solly Flood.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah, Solly Flood. When human beings encounter a massive void of information, we try to force the mystery into familiar, comfortable boxes. Solly Flood was absolutely desperate to prove that a crime had taken place. So his first box was piracy.
Right, but the sources from the inquiry basically shut the piracy theory down immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, piracy is an economic enterprise, right? Pirates board a ship to steal things of value.
Exactly, they want the loot.
But the Dei Gratia crew found the cargo completely secured. The crew's personal belongings, the captain's navigational instruments, and a lockbox containing gold and silver coins were left totally untouched. Pirates simply do not leave the loot behind.
Right, so when piracy was ruled out, Solly Flood pivoted to internal violence. He aggressively pursued the theory of mutiny.
The classic mutiny narrative.
Yep. The idea was that the 7 crew members got into a drunken rage, turned on Captain Briggs, murdered him and his family, and then fled in the lifeboat. Solly Flood even claimed to have found bloodstains on an axe and on the ship's deck.
Okay, I have to push back hard on this mutiny narrative. Let's look at the architectural blueprints of the ship for a second. The Mary Celeste was a brigantine. Could you break that down for someone who maybe doesn't spend their weekends studying 19th century naval architecture?
Sure. A brigantine is a heavily fortified, 2-masted sailing vessel. The forward mast is square-rigged, designed to catch powerful open ocean winds. It is essentially a floating timber fortress built specifically to withstand the punishing environment of the North Atlantic.
Exactly, a floating fortress. So if a capable veteran crew successfully commits mutiny, they take over that fortress. The Mary Celeste is perfectly functional.
Right.
Why on earth would experienced sailors murder the captain and then collectively decide to abandon a heavily fortified, fully stocked brigantine to jump into a frail, tiny, open rowboat in the middle of a freezing ocean? I mean, it is a guaranteed death sentence.
It makes no sense. It completely defies all nautical logic. A mutinous crew would sail the ship to a remote port, forge the registry, and sell the vessel, or at the very least, take the lockbox of gold with them.
Exactly.
And to further dismantle the mutiny theory, later scientific analysis of those so-called bloodstains found on the deck and the axe, well, it revealed them to be nothing more than common rust and saltwater stains.
Wow, so he was just totally making leaps there.
Absolutely. Furthermore, the ship's logbook directly contradicts any narrative of escalating tension.
Oh yeah, the logbook. The sources say it was just sitting quietly on the mate's desk. It's basically the ultimate black box for a 19th century ship.
It really is. The final entry in that logbook was dated November 24th, placing the ship near Santa Maria Island in the Azores. And the entries leading up to that date were entirely routine.
Just standard nautical notes.
Yeah, they noted their geographic position, recorded some rough weather, but there was absolutely zero indication of severe distress, internal conflict, or impending catastrophe.
Okay, so we also need to address the massive financial elephant in the room that Solly Flood zeroed in on next, which is maritime salvage law.
Ah, yes, the salvage money. Salvage law in the 1800s dictated that anyone who recovers an abandoned ship and brings it safely to port is entitled to a substantial percentage of the ship's total value as well as the cargo's value.
We are talking about life-changing money here.
Huge amounts of money.
And because of that financial incentive, conspiracy theorist and Solly Flood himself floated the idea that the crew of the Dei Gratia actually murdered Captain Briggs and his crew just to claim the salvage rights.
It's a dark theory, but the logistics of the ocean cleared the Dei Gratia of any foul play.
How so?
Well, the Dei Gratia left New York 8 days after the Mary Celeste. Given the recorded speeds and weather patterns, it was physically impossible for the Dei Gratia to catch up to the Mary Celeste before November 24th, which is the date of the last log entry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they simply couldn't have been in the same patch of ocean at the time of the disappearance.
So human malice is pretty much off the table.
Okay.
Pirates didn't do it, mutineers didn't do it, the finders didn't do it, and the weather wasn't catastrophic enough to think them. We are just left with this massive, glaring contradiction.
Really are.
We have a rational, experienced captain who fiercely loves his family, making the seemingly completely irrational choice to put his wife, his 2-year-old baby, and his crew into a flimsy wooden rowboat. We need a rational motive for extreme, sudden panic.
And to find that motive, we actually have to look down into the dark, damp hold of the ship. We have to look at the specific cargo they were transporting to Italy. The Mary Celeste was carrying 7,701 barrels of industrial alcohol.
And this is where the chemistry of this situation becomes the most vital piece of evidence. Industrial alcohol is highly volatile, right?
Highly volatile. Let's look at the mechanisms of how this works. Out of those 7,701 barrels, the salvage crew found that 9 of them were completely empty.
Just 9.
Just 9. But crucially, those 9 barrels were made of red oak, while the rest were made of white oak. And red oak is a highly porous wood.
Okay, so think of leaving a sealed plastic gas can sitting outside in the hot sun. The liquid gasoline warms up and turns into a gas, expanding rapidly. And the plastic walls start to bulge outward because the internal pressure has nowhere to go.
That's a great analogy.
The wooden hold of the Mary Celeste was basically a massive sealed version of that gas can.
Exactly. You have 701 barrels sloshing around in the hold as the ship rolls on the ocean. The friction generates heat. The porous red oak barrels allow the expanding alcohol liquid to leak out as a highly combustible vapor.
Which is terrifying.
It is. The fumes become trapped in the confined, dark belly of the ship. It essentially becomes an unignited pressure cooker.
And you don't even need an actual fire to trigger an evacuation, do you? You just need the threat of a fire. I mean, in a wooden ship in 1872, a cargo fire isn't just a minor emergency. It is an immediate, catastrophic death sentence.
It's game over. So the historian's reconstructed timeline pulls all these details together perfectly. Remember that dismantled water pump?
Right, the one on the deck?
Captain Briggs likely ordered a crew member to open the main hatch and use a sounding rod to measure the water in the hold, perhaps because the pump was malfunctioning. But when they lifted that heavy wooden hatch cover, a massive, pungent blast of volatile alcohol vapors rushed out right into their faces.
Wow. Or maybe the shifting barrels below deck caused a friction spark, creating strange rumbling sounds as the pressure built up against the hull.
Exactly. So faced with this overwhelming odor of explosive fumes, Briggs believes the ship is about to become a giant bomb. He doesn't want to permanently abandon the Mary Celeste. I mean, she is his livelihood, right?
He owns part of it.
But he needs to get his family and crew off that deck immediately, just until the vapors clear or the danger passes.
So it's a calculated, temporary evacuation. He orders everyone into the yawl. They deploy the small boat and trail it behind the Mary Celeste, probably tied off with a long tow rope, just waiting to see if the ship explodes.
Exactly. You want to be far enough away to survive a blast, but tethered so you can pull yourself back on board once the air clears.
It is a totally sound, logical command in a terrifying moment. But this temporary safety measure turns into the ultimate tragedy. The weather reports did indicate rough seas, right? So a sudden squall hits the area.
And a squall isn't just a rainy afternoon. It is a sudden, localized burst of violent wind that radically alters the surface of the water in a matter of seconds.
It creates immense, jarring tension on any line connecting two vessels.
The sheer tension of a heavy 100-foot ship pulling a tiny, low-riding boat through a sudden windstorm, it causes the tow rope to snap.
Oh man. Just like that, the physical tether to their survival is severed. The massive ocean effortlessly swallows the small lifeboat. The Mary Celeste, with her sails still partially set, catches the wind and simply sails away, leaving them stranded in the swells.
It is a terrifying, fundamentally natural explanation for the abandoned ship. The danger of the explosion passes, but the crew is already lost to the sea.
The chemistry and the weather really do provide the most logical narrative we possess. I have to play devil's advocate here, though, because there is a detail in the source material that creates a jagged edge in this theory for me.
Okay, let's hear it.
If this was a calculated temporary evacuation led by a highly experienced captain, why on earth did they leave their navigation instruments behind?
Yes, that is the enduring sticking point of the entire mystery.
I mean, a sextant is not an optional nautical accessory. A sextant is a specialized instrument used to measure the angle between the horizon and a celestial body, like the sun or a star, to figure out your latitude. Without a sextant in 1872, you are completely blind on the open ocean.
You're lost.
Right. Grabbing your navigation tools is muscle memory for a captain. Leaving your navigation instruments behind is like running out of your house during a fire alarm, but intentionally taking the time to take your car keys out of your pocket and leave them on the kitchen counter.
That's a really good point.
It implies a level of disorganized panic that doesn't quite fit the calculated temporary retreat theory.
It really raises a fundamental question about human behavior under extreme stress. Because you're right, no single natural theory cleanly and perfectly explains every single detail found aboard the Mary Celeste.
Right.
The alcohol vapor expansion theory is the most scientifically sound model we have, but it still requires us to accept that an experienced, rational captain made a critical, fatal error in judgment by forgetting his tools during a moment of supreme, blinding panic.
There's just a gap in the logic. A tiny sliver of the unexplained remains open. And, whenever there is a gap in logic in a high-profile tragedy, human imagination immediately rushes in to fill the void.
Oh, absolutely.
The story didn't end when the Dei Gratia towed the Mary Celeste into Gibraltar and claimed their partial salvage reward. That was merely the birth of the legend.
Over the last 150 years, the truth underwent a radical mutation. Writers, novelists, and journalists took those initial eerie facts and exaggerated them to sell papers.
They couldn't resist a good ghost ship.
No, they couldn't. And the most infamous accelerant of this myth was actually a young doctor named Arthur Conan Doyle, well before he wrote Sherlock Holmes.
Wait, really? Sherlock Holmes' creator?
Yes, he published a wildly popular fictional short story based on the event, but he changed the name to the Mary Celeste.
Oh, wow. And the media took Conan Doyle's fictional embellishments and reported them as fact, right? The partially eaten meal from the original rumors morphed into steaming hot meals still sitting on the dining table, waiting to be eaten.
Which is physically impossible given the ship had been drifting for 10 days.
Right, but it paints a deliciously spooky picture for a reader sitting in a London armchair.
Exactly. The narrative shifted dramatically from an unfortunate maritime accident to a supernatural event. The Mary Celeste became the ultimate blank canvas for every wild theory imaginable. When facts run out, the paranormal shift begins.
And we ended up with all of them. Sea monsters plucking the crew off the deck one by one with giant tentacles.
Ancient oceanic curses, too. Fueled by the fact that the ship was originally named the Amazon and had a dark history of accidents before it was repaired and renamed.
Oh, I saw that in the sources. There are also theories about alien abductions or the ship sailing through strange interdimensional portals that just swallow the humans and spit the wooden vessel back out into our reality.
And if we look at the psychology behind why these myths endure, it is profoundly revealing about how we process the unknown. You see, the open ocean is inherently isolating. It is vast, it is deep, and it is entirely indifferent to human suffering.
It's terrifying.
It is, and that isolation makes mysteries feel ancient and unknowable.
It's like the ultimate locker room mystery, but the room is a wooden box floating in a void.
Exactly. And the most unsettling variable in this entire equation, the detail that turns the Mary Celeste into a haunting blank slate, is the fact that the Atlantic Ocean never returned a single piece of physical evidence regarding the crew's fate.
Right. No bodies were ever recovered.
None. The ocean never gave up Captain Briggs. He never gave up his wife Sarah. It never returned baby Sophia or a single one of those 7 veteran sailors. They were erased from the physical world completely.
It perfectly illustrates how human beings process trauma. We have this deep-seated tendency to invent monsters when we are faced with a total void of information.
We really do.
I mean, we would almost prefer a terrifying supernatural story about a sea monster or a dimensional portal over the chaotic, cold, unexplainable reality of a random accident. A monster, no matter how scary, has a motive.
A purpose.
But a snapped tow rope in the freezing Atlantic is just a meaningless, random tragedy.
We crave narrative closure. We want the final chapter of a story to resolve the tension. But the Mary Celeste denies us that closure.
Synthesizing all of our sources here, historians and maritime experts today overwhelmingly favor the natural chemical explanations. The highly volatile industrial alcohol vapors leaking from porous red oak barrels cause an immediate panic.
The crew made a hasty evacuation into the yawl, tethering themselves to the main ship.
Right, and then a sudden squall hit, snapping the line, causing an accidental fatal separation. It grounds the tragedy firmly in chemistry, physics, and weather, rather than ghosts.
But despite the absolute rationality of that explanation, the Mary Celeste remains universally famous. The endurance of the myth comes down to the profound physical contradiction of the ship itself. The ship survived.
Healthy, silent, and empty.
The vessel was essentially untouched by whatever force destroyed its crew. It is as though the ocean carefully, surgically plucked every living soul from the decks and then simply allowed the wood and canvas to sail on. A perfectly healthy ship crossing the ocean, carrying nothing but silence.
It is such a chilling historical image. I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today, building on the mechanisms of that lifeboat theory we just reconstructed.
Okay, let's hear it.
When we picture the Mary Celeste, our mind's eye almost always focuses on the ship. We picture this empty, majestic ghost ship drifting silently through the fog, mysterious and alone. But I want you to flip the camera around for a second.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Put yourself in that tiny, vulnerable wooden lifeboat. You are freezing. You are violently tossed by rough, gray Atlantic waves. And you are sitting shoulder to shoulder with your terrified family and your crew.
Stranded.
And you have to sit there, completely helpless, and watch your perfectly healthy, completely safe ship, which is your only way home, your only shelter, slowly catch the wind and drift away into the fog without you.
The sheer unimaginable terror of watching your own survival sail away.
It's a haunting perspective, and it changes entirely how you view the mystery of those drifting planks of wood. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Mary Celeste. Keep wondering, keep questioning the sources, and we'll see you on the next exploration.